Chapter 15, The Iron Grip Abroad, Exploitation and Engineered Chaos. The crimes detailed in the preceding chapter, the financial fraud, the weaponization of virtue, and the domestic creation of a perpetual underclass, were merely the domestic face of the iron grip of Barack Obama. The full, monstrous scale of this network's operation is revealed when we trace the same patterns of destabilization and exploitation across the globe. In this chapter, we will cover 3 prominent examples of this iron grip operating abroad, showcasing a repeating pattern: destabilize the regime, exploit the chaos, and establish a permanent criminal pipeline for profit. This cycle echoes the pattern established in the 1940s and 50s, when the U.S. intelligence community enabled the Mafia to become the firmly established in Italy. Lucky Luciano himself went to Italy to manage his shipments of heroin from Turkey, through France and Italy, and on to America, becoming the chief architect of vast prostitution and human smuggling rings. The intelligence agencies effectively built up and protected an army of the Mafia in Italy, who operated with impunity for 30 years while only users and low-level dealers were ever caught. This same pattern was documented in the Vietnam War era. The American agencies showed up in the Golden Triangle, enabling the flow of heroin via operations like Air America. The architects and investors were never caught, and the pipeline still flows today. Again, in the 1980s, we documented that the U.S. government, in effect, spent your tax dollars manufacturing, shipping, and selling cocaine, while simultaneously driving the price sky high. Figures like Pablo Escobar and his network were trained and aided by U.S. and Israeli efforts, only to turn and assassinate half the Colombian judiciary, 3 presidential candidates, and thousands upon thousands more. This network made billions and billions of dollars exploiting an incredible magnitude of suffering, and it was the street distributors, like Freeway Rick Ross, who did the most time, with 14 years served of a 20-year sentence. Impunity, leniency, and profit. Obstruct and obfuscate. The weaponization of the border, Operation Fast and Furious. This brings us to the presidency of Barack Obama in 2008. The playbook was run domestically and then immediately deployed across the border with Operation Fast and Furious. Under the lie of national security, federal agencies were caught smuggling thousands of guns into Mexico with the intention of giving them to cartel figures. These weapons are specifically linked to hundreds of murders across the country, fundamentally altering the balance of power. The destabilization was absolute, leading to multiple political assassinations, bombings, and mass executions. The descent into chaos was total, and the cocaine, heroin, methamphetamine, and migrants flowed unrestricted. The homicide rate in Juarez, El Paso's sister city, separated only by a river barely deep enough to swim in, rivaled that of warzone Iraq. The Libyan Slave Markets. Next, we look at the deliberate destabilization of the regime in Libya. That country descended into absolute chaos and became the focal point for human horror in the 21st century. In the north, the collapse of central authority created the main departure point for smugglers and traffickers to depart Africa and cross into Europe, typically landing in Italy and Greece. Many of these desperate people are trapped into networks, mirroring the kind of operation run by figures like Jeffrey Epstein, who coincidentally was getting out of jail completely around this time, shielded by his famous legal deal. However, in the southern city of Sabha, the situation became even worse. There are documented, verified, open-air slave markets where people are being sold for as little as $200. This is murder, slavery, drug dealing, and prostitution being managed under the lie of national security. Opium and Captagon, the Perpetual Drug Pipeline. The global drug trade continued to flourish under Obama's watch. We can point to the continued dominance of Afghanistan as the global opium producer, even as Obama's troop surge kicked in. We can also point to the diversification of the product, with methamphetamine production expanding across the region. Again, the pattern is revealing. When the U.S. leaves in 2021, the Taliban immediately shuts down the heroin trade. Next, we move to Syria. Following a pattern identical to Libya, the intelligence agencies moved in supplying weapons, the regime was destabilized, and the entire country, the presidential family included, became dedicated to turning the territory into a drug lab. They became one of the leading global producers of Captagon, a powerful amphetamine similar to methamphetamine that now dominates the Gulf states' markets. The assassination of Dissent. Finally, we must mention the other overt military actions taken. Despite having won a Nobel Peace Prize, Obama dropped more bombs than any president since the Vietnam War. These actions, the drone strikes, the covert special operations in Somalia, Yemen, and Pakistan, were overt assassinations of dissent. They were calculated murders, authorized under the veneer of national security, which guaranteed the perpetual war machine continued to generate profits and continued to destroy any coherent governance that might impede the iron grip's illicit flow of drugs, weapons, and human beings. The time for reckoning is now. The illusion of governance has fractured. What we face is not policy failure, but a calculated, state-sponsored campaign of organized crime. The evidence is clear. The opioid epidemic is fueled by pipelines built and protected by officials in our name. The migrant crisis is the direct, predictable human fallout from deliberate, engineered chaos abroad. The perpetual war machine is not a defense strategy. It is a profit scheme built on global assassination and exploitation. This is not a conspiracy theory. It is a conspiracy fact, documented in the bloody footprints of Juarez, the slave markets of Sabha, and the drone strikes over Yemen. The criminals operate with the shield of the state, their hands dripping with the blood of thousands, yet their names remain untouched by justice. What would Patrick Henry say? He would not debate. He would roar. He would see this iron grip as the ultimate tyranny, one that uses our own tax dollars and our own institutions to enslave the global populace and enrich an elite few. His cry would be our clarion call. Give me liberty from this financial, political, and moral enslavement, or give me death. What would Martin Luther King Jr. say? He would denounce this system as a profound, evil inversion of justice. He would call for a moral awakening against the triad of militarism, exploitation, and state-sanctioned impunity. He would tell us that we have a moral obligation to dismantle the very structure that profits from human suffering, declaring that injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. We can no longer afford the luxury of silence. The state has been hijacked. Your rights, your financial security, and the dignity of millions abroad are being sacrificed for the iron grip's illicit flow of drugs, weapons, and human beings. This is not a matter for a distant election. It is a crisis of conscience that demands immediate, uncompromising action. You must now become the relentless force of justice. The fight is not merely against a political party, it is against the architects of chaos and the profiteers of human misery. Rise, expose, demand justice.